Is Israel ready for what's about to hit them? A message from an unexpected source, Russia, has just rocked their world. It's as if a seismic shift is about to take place, but nobody knows what the aftermath will look like. What has Russia said that has left Israel reeling? And what will be the consequences of this shocking revelation? As we follow the story of those impacted by this message, we can't help but wonder what lies ahead. Will Israel be able to weather this storm, or will they be forever changed by the words of their former rival? Join us as we uncover the answers in Israel's shocking message from Russia, a journey into the unknown. Russian President Vladimir Putin recently issued a warning about Israel's military activities in Gaza, expressing concerns about the potential consequences of the conflict extending beyond the Middle East. Putin emphasized the humanitarian aspect of the issue, expressing his dismay over the suffering of innocent civilians in the enclave. He stated that women, children, and the elderly are bearing the brunt of the actions of those who are not them. By addressing the potential spillover effects, Putin noted the interlinked nature of geopolitical events and how consequences from regional conflicts may have wider ramifications beyond their immediate theaters of war. Furthermore, Putin has hinted at the necessity of addressing the root causes of conflicts in the Middle East. He called for a more comprehensive and equitable resolution that considers the grievances of all parties involved. The Russian president leads a military campaign in Ukraine and expressed worry about a larger conflict beyond the Middle East. He urged Israel to cease its military actions in Gaza, warning of potential consequences. He's spoken with other international leaders about the issue. The Russian president cautioned that further escalation could lead to grave, extremely dangerous and destructive outcomes. Notably, he highlighted that the ramifications were not confined solely to the Middle East region, but had the potential to spill over well beyond its borders. In a critical tone directed at the West, the Russian leader pointedly remarked that certain unspecified forces were actively seeking to exacerbate the situation. He asserted that these forces were aiming to provoke additional escalation with the apparent objective of involving as many countries and peoples as possible in the unfolding conflict. According to the Russian president, the overarching goal behind the actions of certain unspecified forces was to initiate a substantial surge of chaos and mutual animosity, extending not only within the confines of the Middle East, but also far beyond its geographical boundaries. He asserted that as part of this strategy, these forces were deliberately manipulating the national and religious sentiments of millions of people. Expressing empathy, President Putin conveyed his condolences to the family affected by the actions of Hamas, extending his sympathies to both Israelis and citizens of other countries who lost their lives or were injured. Despite the condemnation of the violence, he reiterated Moscow's stance in favor of a two-state solution to the Palestinian-Israeli issue. According to Putin, this approach remains the only viable path toward achieving a long-term and sustainable resolution to the ongoing conflict. The friendship between Israeli President Benjamin Netanyahu and Russian President Vladimir Putin has become less warm due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Even though Netanyahu used to call Putin his dear friend and visited Russia frequently, things have changed. The relationship between Russia and Israel is not as close as before, especially since Israel has been more cautious in supporting Ukraine compared to its Western friends who are more critical of Russia. The conflict in Ukraine has put Israel in a tricky spot. On one hand, Israel wants to maintain its historical ties with Russia, but on the other hand, it also wants to align with its Western allies who disapprove of Russia's actions. So Israel is trying to balance its connections with both Russia and the Western countries. Although the change in tone, it's important to note that Israel has not completely cut ties with Russia. Israel is navigating carefully to protect its interests and stability in the region while dealing with the evolving situation. The friendship between Netanyahu and Putin is part of the past, and the current geopolitical circumstances are shaping how Israel responds to the conflict in Ukraine and its relationships with both Russia and the West. The recent meeting between high-ranking members of Hamas and a senior Russian official on October 26th has stirred significant consternation and surprise within Israel. The engagement with Hamas, an organization designated as a terrorist group by Israel and other countries, raised eyebrows and prompted a swift and strong response from the Israeli Foreign Ministry, characterizing Russia's decision to host the Hamas delegation as an act in support of terrorism. Israeli officials expressed deep concern over the perceived legitimization of a group with a history of employing violent tactics, particularly against civilians. After the recent attacks by Hamas on October 7th, Russia is walking a fine line. They criticize Israel for bombing Gaza, but don't want to completely cut ties with Israel. Russia seems to want to keep channels open with both sides, possibly because of his historical connections or a desire to play a role in mediating the conflict. As the Israel-Hamas conflict continues without a clear resolution, Russia might be hoping that the focus on this crisis will distract the US and its allies from paying too much attention to Russia's actions in Ukraine. It's like Russia is trying to manage its relationships carefully in the Middle East, while hoping the ongoing conflict there will shift the spotlight away from its activities in Eastern Europe. Now let's delve into Russia's association with Hamas and explore what experts believe Russia could benefit from the escalating tensions in the Middle East. Russia's hosting of Hamas members in Moscow has sparked conversation, with Russia justifying its actions as an effort to maintain diplomatic connections with both parties in the Hamas conflict. The Russian Foreign Ministry clarified that the meetings were meant to foster discussions and free hostages in Gaza. However, Israel is concerned that Russia may be shifting its foreign policy towards closer ties with Hamas. Additionally, reports suggest that Palestinian militants are finding ways to bypass Western sanctions by channeling millions of dollars through Russian cryptocurrency exchanges. These developments contribute to growing apprehensions about Russia's evolving stance in the Israel-Palestine conflict and raise questions about its role in facilitating financial transactions for groups with controversial designations. Ukraine's head of defense intelligence, Kirill Budanov, has claimed that Russia recently supplied arms to Hamas, although he did not provide evidence to support his assertion. It's important to note that there is currently no evidence indicating Russian involvement in instigating Hamas's attacks on October 7th or supplying the weapons used in these incidents. While Russia has refrained from labeling Hamas's attacks on October 7th as terrorism, it has notably not condemned them either. Instead, Russian officials have called for a cessation of hostilities from both sides and reiterated their support for the establishment of a Palestinian state. In a diplomatic move at the United Nations Security Council, Russia proposed a resolution advocating for a ceasefire and the release of all hostages. However, this resolution faced challenges and it was ultimately voted down. In various public addresses, Russian officials, including Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, have consistently voiced strong criticism of Israel's treatment of Palestinians. Lavrov on October 28th went so far as to declare that Israel's bombardment of Gaza is a violation of international law. President Vladimir Putin's historical comparison between Nazi Germany's The Siege of Leningrad during World War LL and Israel's blockade of Gaza was a particularly powerful move. Russian President Vladimir Putin has highlighted the gravity of the Gaza crisis and the Siege of Leningrad in Russian history. While Russia is engaged in intense fighting in Ukraine, experts suggest that Russia may see an opportunity to benefit from the Israel-Hamas conflict as a potential diversion of Western support from Ukraine. This could provide Russia with a strategic advantage in its actions in Ukraine. Nonetheless, Russia is not without risks if the Israel-Hamas conflict escalates. A critical factor is Russia's desire to maintain its military presence in Syria without deploying additional troops. Analysts point out that preserving military capabilities in Syria while avoiding an escalation that necessitates further troop deployment is a delicate balancing act for Russia in the evolving dynamics of the Middle East. The intensifying conflict between Israel and Hamas has a significant impact on the sentiments within the Arab Islamic world. This turmoil has resulted in a surge of anger, particularly directed toward the United States, seen by many as having a complex role in the region's geopolitical landscape. Russia perceives an opportune moment to capitalize on the escalating anti-American sentiments within Muslim-majority countries. As anti-US feelings grow, Moscow envisions leveraging this discontent to its advantage. The dissatisfaction is not only rooted in specific policies, but also reflects a broader frustration with Western approaches to conflicts in the Middle East. Russia positioning itself as the diplomatic player aims to present an alternative narrative and strengthen its influence in the region. Does Russia have a role to play in the ongoing Israel-Gaza conflict? Thank you for watching our video. Share your thoughts with us in the comment section and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. Remember to hit the notification bell for more videos.